was asked to do a version of Scheherazade for a. Wait, let me start again. I'm just.
Yeah, it's fine. Okay, so where did it all begin?
Where did it begin? Yes, where did it begin? I think it was early 2010. I was involved in writing a piece of music based on a David Hockney painting, and a friend of mine, Clarita, who's actually producing the show tonight, discovered that I did orchestral music, and she put me in touch with a friend of hers, Julia, who was had a project called Post-Romantic Empire, I think it's called that, and it was a strange process. He put musicians in touch with other musicians, and then in touch with producers, and then he suggested songs that they would cover or interpret, and they asked me to interpret Scheherazade, and that's when I was put in touch with Julia Kent. So I wrote the 3 pieces. It was very specific. It had to be in 3 pieces, and it had to last 20 minutes. So that was the basis of the project that continued from then. So I wrote the 3 pieces on piano and for 4 cellos, sent her the scores, and she recorded them and sent them back. And there was supposed to be some other people involved, but we didn't really need them, so we didn't bother with them. And then, so it went on and on. I mastered the tracks and sent them to Italy, and then it just seemed like nothing was happening. So Julia came to London and played a concert. That was the first time I saw her play. And we sat down after the show and said how much we'd enjoyed working together and how nice it was, and it would be a shame if the Scheherazade suite wasn't released. But it wasn't enough to be an album. So we thought, okay, well, let's add another couple of tragic classical love stories and have an album. So it would be 3 stories, each split into 3 parts. So I think I suggested Tristan and Isolde, because it's an English tale, like pre-Arthurian tale set in Cornwall and Ireland, and she suggested Orpheus and Eurydice. The original plan was that I would write one of them and she would write the other. But then she got busy, and she's crazy busy touring and recording, and so I ended up writing both of them, and I sent her all the parts, and it actually took her a long time. And at one stage I thought about recording with other people, but it didn't work out because I'd written the music for Julia. So I persevered, and I think it was Christmas 2013. I asked her, I begged her, I said, let's finish this, and she said okay. And then a year later, she actually finished it and sent the files. So it took, from the beginning, 4 years, 5 years until now, until we're performing it. Unfortunately, Julie's not playing with us tonight because she's busy. So.
Okay, that's really cool. And so, like, when you think of a story and you chose a story,
Mm-hmm.
how does the story then influence the initial sort of melody, the riffs?
Well, I decided to do it in 3 parts to match Scheherazade. So I chose the main characters, or the main pieces of action from each story. So Tristan and Isolde, and then the king. And Orpheus and Eurydice, it's Orpheus and Eurydice, and then the underworld. And then I just tried to describe my feelings in music about each character or each part of the story. So thinking about Tristan, he's an English prince, so you kind of get those thoughts of England and King Arthur's time, and you can't be literal. I mean, you can't unless you're using lyrics. It's impossible to describe a story with music. So it just has to be the sense and the atmosphere and the feeling that the story gives you.
And so, is there a linear story? Like, so you can't.
No, they're just impressions. Yeah,
okay,
they're just Isolde would be just my impression of Isolde in music.
So, in those 3 pieces within that story, there are little impressions of the character of
Yeah.
the story. But I mean, are there any riffs that do you call them riffs? I'm not going to say leitmotifs.
No, there are no like, there's no little piece of music that describes a person, or we're in a church and it's haunted, probably. So they're just impressions. They're just like broad pictures of the feeling that the story gives to me, or that character.
Do you remember one of the first pieces that you?
The
Little riffs?
Scheherazade was the first piece that I wrote. The King. This. It's kind of very heavy, and he's been betrayed by his wife, and he's distraught, and he's depressed and miserable, and it's difficult to the music. The piano really in these pieces is just a support to the cellos. I wrote the whole thing for Julia, so it's really a cello piece. The piano is secondary, apart from one song where it's kind of takes the lead.
Which one?
The Fairy from Orpheus and Eurydice. So that's got two piano solos in it, which I'm regretting tonight, but they're there.
You mentioned that you wrote it for Julia. That's interesting to me, because I thought you just wrote music and anybody can play it. But
Well, yeah, they can,
but
and
what-
we're proving that tonight because
Absolutely.
it sounds absolutely beautiful. So, but I wrote it for the cellist, for the cello. Okay, if we take Julia's name out of the equation, I wrote it as a vehicle for the cello, not as a piano piece. They're not piano pieces. The piano is an accompaniment.
Okay, you just mentioned in that piece that you just described depression and the sort of like frustration, and I guess you are drawn to that type of content. You're a romantic, as you've said before, but you're
Well,
also
yeah, the album's called Love and Other Tragedies.
So what was the idea behind all that?
Well, it started with Scheherazade, and that's a very tragic love story. I mean, it ends up well, but it doesn't start well. So, yeah, and I think that sad stories lend themselves more readily to interpretation in music.
Is that your main attraction to the stories?
To the stories? Well, we just decided that they were going to be three tragic love stories. So it was that decision, that carried itself.
But it's pretty safe to say that generally you're attracted to.
Well, yeah, I mean, although the Quieter Trees suite, that was based on a painting by David Hockney, I wouldn't say that was sad. And it's quite, it's a beautiful painting, and it's got uplifting bits in it. There are elements of melancholy, but,
That was the word I was looking for, melancholy.
melancholy.
So do you think melancholy works best in this format, piano and cello?
I think in any kind of music, unless it's pop music. There's a famous quote by a Frenchman whose name I can never remember, and he only ever said one quote, which is "Happiness writes white on the page." So, happiness, I'm never really sure what the default emotion is, whether it's sadness or happiness.
It's a good question. I mean, in terms of how the stories influence the music, you've talked about that, but how does your own personal experiences at the time when you're writing influence the music?
Well, yeah, I was pretty sad when I was writing the music. I generally don't, I'm not as creative when I'm happy. So the summer's usually out for me for writing music. I usually stop in about May and don't go back in the studio until October. Yeah. It's a strong influence. When you're happy, you can't write. I don't think you can write sad music.
Is there a piece that we're going to hear tonight? Is there like that you're particularly that you personally like? I mean, obviously you like it all, but I mean, is there a particular piece that you think?
I like them all, and I have favourites depending on what day it is, or how I feel about them, or how I've been working on them. I've been playing them often, obviously, over the last 2 weeks to prepare for the concert. There's one, it's called Romanza, which is Orpheus's piece, which describes him as a musician and him being sad. And it's really simple, and I thought it was just a throwaway at first, but then now playing it, and also when we recorded it, it's one of my favourites. The Il Regno di Morti, the Underworld, that's probably my favourite song on the whole record. That's incredibly difficult to play though. It's the last song we'll play tonight. I'll be quite glad when it's done.
Is it hard for the piano or the cello?
It's hard for the piano and one of the cellos that plays the same line that I do on pizzicato.
Is that because of the timing?
Yeah, it's incredibly stupid timing. When I first wrote it, I didn't play it on a grid, so it went across all bars and time signatures. And now, when people say to me, "What time signature is it in?" and I haven't got a clue. I'm sure somebody cleverer than I could work it out, but it's over a 4, and the cello lead lines play in 4, but the pizzicato part is definitely not.
It's very clever because as a untrained listener, it sounds that there's a definite rhythm to it, there's a pattern to it, but clearly, in terms of.
Yeah, I had to learn it off by heart, and I cannot be distracted when I'm playing it. If I do, I lose it. But now I'm looking straight at Alyssa, and she's playing it with me, and she's an incredible musician, so I can see what she's doing.
Can you tell me a little bit about the 4 playing with you tonight?
Yeah, Francesca is number 1, Lucy is number 2, Miriam 3, and Alyssa 4. And each part they rotate so that they play lead in each song. So, and they play in pairs because I know Francesca and Miriam, and they both suggested a friend. So they're in 2 pairs, and they all rotate, so they all play a lead at some point. So it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, obviously.
Yes. Can you talk a little bit about Francesca and maybe the other person? Was it Lucy? No, Lucy's
Lucy, well, they're friends.
Francesca.
Francesca, I met doing some recording, and we had a lot of fun, and yeah, she's a great player, and she suggested Lucy. I don't think they've ever played together before that. And Miriam, I played here with at a concert, and we stayed in touch because I knew that this concert was coming up, and I always keep my eyes open for cellists. And she brought Alyssa. She went to college with Alyssa.
You've always enjoyed the piano from a young age.
Mm-hmm.
At what point did you realise that actually you enjoy writing for cello as well? Of all the instruments you could have.
Yeah, one of my best friends, Paul, in Toronto. He's a cellist, and he plays in a chamber orchestra, and they sometimes do small bits with guests. And he suggested that we do something together, so I wrote some pieces for him, and that's how it started. I actually then wrote the Quartet Tree Suite for that orchestra, for that chamber orchestra. So that's how I started, and I just really love the cello. It's my favourite instrument outside of the piano.
Can you play it?
I can play anything but the piano.
Play the drum machine.
Yeah.
So I was just going to ask a little bit about the Dorian Gray reading. Why did you choose that, and what significance does it have to the music?
Right. I decided to make this record vinyl, and to cut vinyl at a good level, you can only get about 20 minutes on a side. There are 3 stories. I could have squeezed them onto 2 sides, but then how do you break one of the stories? So I decided to give each side to each story, and that left a blank side. I was toying with the idea of leaving it blank.
Just hold for 1 sec. Just wait for this.
Rolling?
Rolling? All good? Okay, so yeah, we've got to sync cameras.
Yeah. Cool.
Lovely. So, yes, we were talking about the Dorian Grays.
Right. So I wanted to do it on vinyl, and each story is 20 minutes, so it needs a side each. So that means there are 3 stories, so there was going to be a blank side. I did think about having a blank side, because I quite like that idea. But then my next project is a ballet production with La Saison Russe in Moscow, and we're doing the Picture of Dorian Gray as a classical ballet. I've written the music, and so that's my next project, and I thought it would be nice to have a kind of a hint forward, foreshadowing of what I'm doing next. So I got permission to use a 15-minute section of the audio book read by John Moffat. So that's on the full side. It was going to be mystery, kind of. There were going to be dual concentric grooves, but all these ideas are great, but they never happen. So yeah, and it's the section of the book where Dorian falls out of love with Sybil, and she kills herself, and tragedy, love, and he first sees the picture change. So it's quite an important part of the book.
And quite relevant for the music today.
Yeah, and it's also, it's a tragedy, and it fits in nicely, and it's 15 minutes long, and it's nice to hear. I don't know if that many people understand how nice it is to listen to audiobooks, but it's a nice thing. So hopefully it will get people into that.
Great. Any final words about how you're feeling about tonight? How significant is it for you personally? Because you obviously, travelling with The Cure and touring and big crowds and all that sort of stuff, this is a very different...
The smaller the audience, the more nerve-wracking it is generally. 50,000 is easy. 100,000 doesn't make any difference if you go in multiples of hundreds of thousands. We played to 500,000 people one night, and it just doesn't really matter. If it's 100 people, then you know that they're listening to every single note you're playing. And the piano, we're playing acoustically, there's no amplification, and it's very open. So it's nice. It will be nice to play the right notes. It's a shame when nerves affect your playing, but it's something that I think all musicians deal with. It would be nice if I could play as if I was sitting at home. I think having an audience makes you play slightly differently. I'd really rather not. I'm not sure that I really enjoy live performance. I really love the creative part of recording and writing. But it's nice to get everyone out. And it's nice to play these songs live. I mean, it's just they come to life. It's the first time I've played them. When I recorded them, I sent my part to Julia, and then she sent her part back. We never played together. So yeah, it's a special evening, and fingers crossed that we play all the right notes.
Well, I mean, are you happy with how it's being recorded on the vinyl?
Oh, the vinyls, yeah, it's amazing.
You're happy with that? So you've got that. So today will be a slightly different. So, if people want to hear it the way it was intended, they've got it on the vinyl. Today it's about live.
Yeah, but there's a difference between wrong notes and different notes. Although I once said in an interview, there are no wrong notes, just different ones. But in this context, well, it doesn't really matter, does it? It's not heart surgery. Nobody's going to die if we play a wrong note.
Exactly. And what's your way of preparing? How do you get into the zone that you're at home, just you playing the piano?
No, I don't know. I wish I knew. When I go on stage with the band, it's easy. I'm completely relaxed and comfortable. This is completely different for me. Timing and playing with different musicians, classically trained musicians. But we've had 2 days. Well, we rehearsed last night and today, so it's fine. We've saved a bit of edge. You need a bit of edge. You don't want to be too rehearsed.
Cool, looking forward to the edge. Thanks, Roger. That's great.
Thanks.
Thank you. That's good. Now, my legs are all like that was good. Do you need some cutaways? Just keep. Yeah, that was nice.
That's the start. The other thing is always to try not to rush it. I think that generally you rush the timing live. It'd be nice to play it slowly and with space. I think always when I play live I try and play too much. I like to play it as little as possible that still tells the story. That's my
And you've got a full 45 minutes, so I mean, if it turns out to be 50 minutes, I think people would prefer that.
No, it will probably be half an hour because it will be played faster than the record. It always is.
Does your breathing help? Does like breathing slowly?
I'm not breathing, and I won't breathe until it's finished. So if I fall over, then you know what's happened.
Okay, well we'd love it to last longer than short. So
Yeah, and there's no encores. So it'd be nice if people wanted more, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
But there is no more.
There is no more.
No. That's it. When you hear this.
That's the end.
That's it. Good night.
And there's a little bit more cello after that.
No, that's it. We'll stop together.
Oh, you're stopping together today? Yesterday she did an extra bar, I think.
No, not on this one.
Okay.
This one we'll stop.
Oh, okay.
That's the hard one.
With the timing all over the place.
Right.
Quick one, on location. Why this church? Sorry.
We've been playing in this church since we did the Requiem here in, I don't know when it was, 2012. Yeah, it was 2012. And we love Robin, who looks after us, and it's a beautiful church. It's in the heart of the East End, which is where I grew up. Couldn't be better, really. And they really love opening the church up for music and having different events in here. It's a really great place, Shoreditch Church, St Leonards. And it's part of the Oranges and Lemons nursery rhyme. When will I get rich? Ring the bells of Shoreditch.
Oh.
You didn't know that?
No, I don't know that.
No. Oranges and Lemons.
It didn't make its way to Australia.